Well, welcome back. This is Elite Business Live. Welcome. If you're just joining us, this is the first of 2 days coming to you live from central London. I'm Ollie Barrett, and with my co-host Hannah Previtt, we're sort of hopefully steering you through a packed couple of days. Well, shocking things. We've got shoes on, we're in physical presence here, and I get to see some old friends and colleagues. Matt Phelan, how are you?
I'm good. I'm just excited and nervous to be here.
Don't be nervous. Okay. Joanna, lovely to meet you as well. Joanna Dai. We're going to hear much more about your brilliant company as well. And of course, grateful to you, Sonny, for sticking around as well. Now, hopefully, through the ether, we're also joined by Rachel Carrel. There she is. Hello, Rachel. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm coming to you live from Muswell Hill.
Yeah, no, very well. Let's start with you, Rachel, because I want to introduce the panel properly to everyone. But you are running, in my view, one of the most forward-thinking childcare companies in the world, Koru Kids. Tell us what you're doing and for who.
So we are helping people with the problems of childcare, and anyone who's a parent knows that there are many problems of childcare. It's too expensive, the quality isn't high enough, it's too hard to find the great people, and we're trying to solve all of those problems and more. We've been mostly focusing on after-school care, which is a particularly neglected area of childcare. We train nannies ourselves, we then match them and manage them. And you can imagine it's been a roller coaster of a year and last year with the pandemic. But we are helping thousands of children and thousands of families every day, and very happy to be doing our bit, helping parents make it through.
Fantastic. Well, this is Koru Kids, and lots more to come about that, and also how you've managed that transition, I suppose, over the last year, Rachel. Joanna, you are an expat, a US expat, but based here in London. Mm-hmm. I think a former banker as well, if memory serves.
Yes, that's correct.
So was it one of those sort of Archimedes in the bath sort of spark of inspiration for your brilliant women's wear business?
It completely was. I spent 8 years in investment banking in New York and London, working really long hours, running around the trading floor or flying same day and getting on the last flight back. And it was on a flight 16 hours into my day where I thought, my clothes are really uncomfortable, my waistband's digging in, I wish I were my yoga kit. Can this feel like yoga and still look like a power suit? And that was the inspiration.
Brilliant. And this is the business Dai, named after you, but it's also, you're doing it with great thought and care about how the products are made. Just give us a sense of the business journey so far. Where are you up to?
So we launched in 2017. I made that a goal back then that we wanted to do things better for our planet and better for women and for everyone that touches the product on its journey to our customers. As of last year, we got a certified B Corporation.
Congratulations.
With a leading score in the industry above several other brands, but I think our work is just getting started.
And on that, just remind us, this is a B Corporation declaring that you are there for the benefit of all of your stakeholders. Have I got that?
Exactly. B Corp is for not just shareholders in the bottom line, but it's for your customers, suppliers, employees, everyone.
Brilliant. Now I'm just imagining now Matthew Phelan slipping into your yoga power suit as you lean back in business or first class. You're an international man of mystery. Matt, you created the happiness index, right?
Yeah.
This is a thought that's been at the center of our minds, right? In terms of how is everybody really doing? And you help us understand how people are feeling and thinking about their own lives.
Yeah, I mean, there's no getting away from it, and we should talk about it today, which is people are struggling. Yeah. And actually the area that, and one of the things that we talked about when I was here last year was the Minions movie. Yeah. And in the Minions movie, there's a thing called meh, when you feel meh. Mm. And one of the things that hasn't been really talked about much in the press that I just wanted to introduce today is this big group of people in the middle. So we're not talking about people that are suffering from clinical depression or people that are really happy. It's growing from about 20% of the workforce to about 60% of the workforce that just feel meh. Yeah. Which might sound like a funny thing to talk about, but it's actually really serious. And that's one of the things I was thinking. What's changed since we met, other than the whole world a year ago? Yeah. That is one of the big changes we've seen. Yeah.
And then let's just go back to the big picture in terms of the sorts of organisations you work with, because you are drawing a very clear link between how someone's feeling overall within an organisation and how that organisation performs.
Yeah. So for me, the biggest thing is banning this is happiness or emotions a fluffy metric. And let's just talk about emotions. In my career, I've been described as too emotional before. Scientifically, that's not a thing. Being too emotional doesn't exist. But if you're in a work environment and you don't allow people to be emotional, and you're a great host, you allow us to do that. But if you don't allow people to do that, a couple of things that it would stop you from doing would be being creative. And memory recall. So that's just a couple of things that if you don't allow people to be emotional, as part of your role, allowing us to feel comfortable, you won't get the best out of people, whether we're your guests on here or whether they're your employees.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess there's that thing around how do we have better conversations with our teams about how they're doing and how they're really doing. And I just wonder with that, are there times when technology is our friend? And are there times when we just strip it all back and it's about one human connecting with another? Can I put that to you, Rachel, first of all? How do you really get a handle on how everyone's doing and how you can support them?
Have a regular practice in our team meetings where we start off a couple of our team meetings, not every single one, but some strategic ones during the week. And we all go around and we have to choose 3 words that describe how we're feeling. And I think the fact that it's 3 words is really important, because often people will say something like this. They'll say, I'm feeling fine, a bit tired, and completely overwhelmed. And you sort of get the truth in the 3rd word. It's amazing how often it happens. And quite often they don't want to go that deep and they can only think of 2. And we kind of try and hold that line. No, you've got to say 3, you've got to say 3. And the truth comes out in the 3rd one. And one of the things I think is really useful about that practice is it normalizes these feelings. You know, I'm feeling annoyed with my partner. I'm feeling harassed. I'm feeling exhausted that, you know, because I didn't sleep well. These are all just normal human emotions that everyone feels. There's no judgment in feeling them. And if we just simply acknowledge, we actually find that a lot of our meetings go a lot better, because, you know, I know that you don't have that grumpy look on your face because you don't like my idea. You have that grumpy look on your face because you're just really tired, because your newborn kept on waking up throughout the night.
So what happens then, and Sunny, maybe you've got a view on this, as an organisation grows and they say, I remember the day we could practically all have sat around the campfire, but now it would have to be the biggest bonfire in the world. We start to introduce technology, dashboards. At what point does it all become, frankly, a bit sinister and weird, or a genuinely normal way to keep a tab on how everyone's doing?
I think we have to adapt to the times. So I think when we were all in the office or in a location, you can pick up on cues of if somebody is tired or if somebody's not feeling great. And then as a manager, that's a responsibility to go and respond to that cue and help support that person. When we're in a stage now where we're not together and we're all in different locations, and if somebody is not feeling great, they turn their video off, and the only cue you've got is a voice cue. I think additional technology helping, giving you an idea of actually, and there are some interesting things of like analyzing voice. So if me as a manager, I can analyze somebody's voice and see actually they aren't as upbeat as they usually are, maybe there's a potential issue here, and giving somebody that additional support. I think personally I would use technology in the environment that it's needed and to adapt to new ways of working.
Okay, and I just got to say, Sally, someone listening to that might be drawn in and saying, gosh, well, this is powerful. And you will forgive me saying someone might go, this is spooky and weird, right? So will you forgive that alternative view on that?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to take both sides of the coin, right? You've got to think about both, and some of it maybe it's a little big brother. I don't want my manager knowing how I feel today,
right?
Which is fine, but that's no different to me and you having a conversation over lunch or something, and me just being a little bit more withdrawn. You'll pick up on those cues.
I guess, Joanna, the reason we're starting here is because the better we understand how each other are doing, the more we can enjoy work, bring our full selves to work. How does it work in practice? What works for you?
Well, I think a great anecdote from my team is we all came in on Jan 4th, the first January of the year, which is the gloomiest day of the year, but also after the evening of the announcement that we're going into lockdown, and just went around and asked how they were feeling. pretty miserable. And by the end of the week, we sent cocktail kits to everyone and did a social so that we can all just be in a more relaxed environment. But I do think not having that physical presence where we are able to detect those extra emotions that you don't get through digital, it does make it more challenging.
Got it. So Matt, just briefly help us navigate through this, because clearly you've got some very powerful technology available to track, if I can put it like that, how to use it responsibly and thoughtfully.
I think building on both the points here is around an anonymous perspective of doing it. So if someone's feeding back about, if I tell you now how I feel and we didn't happen to be on stage and it was just over there, I trust you, so I'd expect you to keep that anonymous. So I'm a personal believer that if people are using technology to give feedback, the feedback should be anonymous, and that you should never be worried that this is going to go elsewhere, because that creates a safe environment to do that. And it shouldn't replace the fact that if you feel worried or concerned or whatever about something, you should still speak to your manager.
Yes.
Technology should not replace normal basic human behaviour, like all the discussions around here, like, has anyone asked you how you are today, Ollie? How are you?
Yeah. Well, I'm reminded of some very high-profile conversations recently when someone hadn't been asked that question. By the way, if you've got questions for the panel, please do send them in. I'm going to change the subject completely, and we're going to come back to this. Does your organisation have an office, a physical office, in its future? And if so, why? And if not, why not? And I'll start with you, Joanna, if that's all right, and Rachel will get you after that. But and forgive me as we switch gears to get as much in as possible, but give us the verdict.
For my business, which is a product-based business, absolutely. And we do lead with product innovation and research and development. So that is our place where we do have samples of swatches and garment construction, the first prototypes coming in. We do need a fit model to try things on, to measure things. And you can't do all of that via Zoom in a conference call. So for us, there's absolutely a place for the office. But even for the teams who can work remotely, coming together to have that brainstorm or having that water cooler like idea spark is, I think, so important. And you just don't have that interaction or that bouncing off each other at home.
Having said that, and Rachel will come to you momentarily, you're a global citizen. Isn't that limiting your horizons? If I'm cheeky for a moment, you could have your CMO based out of the Netherlands.
I mean, I think what this pandemic has shown is that you can absolutely be a global company and be virtual and everywhere and still have your core product development, the physical aspect of your company based somewhere. Okay. But I agree with you, like the CMO, people who can work virtually, absolutely. I think there is a premise for doing that for us in the future, and we wouldn't have thought that before.
Okay, tricky one this. Rachel, where's Koru Kids on this?
I think we're doing what a lot of people are doing, which is we're going to be hybrid. And people like me, I've got 2 young kids. I've absolutely loved, getting to spend more time with them. I personally don't want to go back to the old days of being mostly in the office, but I'm extremely conscious that I'm at a particular life stage. And for the more junior people in our team, and I think this is pretty common, they're absolutely craving the human contact. They want to be with each other. They want to be in an office. And also they don't necessarily have the home set up to enable home working. So we're going to be basically downsizing a lot, our office, and we're going to have a kind of a hub. And I will expect that the junior people will go there most days, probably. And then the senior people will go occasionally, and we'll try to invest more, because we're saving on office space. We'll try to invest more in things like summer parties and company days and that sort of thing. One of the things that's really on my mind as a con of what I've just said is I'm really thinking about mentorship and apprenticeship for the junior people, because I think so much of the way you learn, certainly the way I learned, was by osmosis and, just sitting next to someone, hearing what they did, poking my head into a meeting. So I'm very open to and looking for ideas on this. I think, though, everyone is thinking about this right now. So I'm confident that we will figure out how to do really good apprenticeship.
Good. Well, this is very I'm grateful to how open you are in your thinking process on that. Thank you. Very briefly, Sonny, we could talk about this for an hour, couldn't we? Sonny, Ring Central office, you don't need one potentially. You could walk the walk, but I suspect you find something valuable about face-to-face.
Yeah, I think it's both points are the same. We have a lot of product innovation. We have engineers that will want to work together. We have marketing campaigns which will need different teams. So I think there's definitely a hybrid approach moving forward. I don't believe I don't believe all businesses will ever be the same again. I think looking at studies, a lot of people want a hybrid approach to working. They don't want to be forced either way. So I think moving forward, we will see a lot more flexible working.
So on that, Matt, you've got offices in New York, is it Shanghai in China?
Yep.
Yeah, so office in the future of the index?
So the way that I look at it now, I've had a real review of everything, is I look at it, rather than office, I look at it as, I use the word home. And then once you start to forget about the word office and think about home, I think what you have in your head totally changes. And the reason, and it's good because we've got a fashion entrepreneur on here, which is, what's that saying? Like, fashion is temporary, style is permanent. And I think what human beings haven't evolved in the last 12 months. Evolution doesn't work that quick. So our basic human needs still remain the same. And why I think where we will move to is we will need spaces to come together and collaborate. But we need the flexibility to be able to do the stuff like school runs and stuff like that. So that's what we're starting from, is we will need homes around the world where people can come to collaborate. That's how we're imagining it.
And just to be clear there, you're talking about almost like the business sense of a home.
Yeah, exactly.
Somewhere to feel
because we have this whole conversation versus home versus work or whatever. But I think we should be allowed to have multiple homes, because you shouldn't go into the office and think, I've got to sit at my desk and do my work. That can be done from anywhere.
Got it. Right. Well, I can see some good questions coming in. I want to ask you to be quite pithy, each of you, in my next question, because I think it divides opinion. To what extent is it okay to treat every member of your team differently, given they're all individuals? And I hinted at this with Sunny, versus treating everybody the same. Because it wouldn't be fair, would it, to say John can do something that Julie's not allowed to? Or maybe the enlightened future is one where we tailor how everybody is allowed to work because we understand we're all individuals. Joanna, then Rachel.
I think everyone has their own qualities, their own passions, and their own growth journey within a company. And so I do see my management style as everyone as an individual, taking them through in our regular reviews. What's going well? What do you love doing? What don't you love doing? And as a startup, we already wear so many hats as an individual, but I think it really allows that person to hone into what areas they really excel in and want to pursue as a career and get experience in.
So I think, conceptually we can get behind that. So in reality, if you and the team member had discovered that frankly home working wasn't working out for them, to what extent would it be okay to say, therefore we're not going to let you do that, I'm afraid, and you're going to have to come into base, because clearly that's what we've just agreed works best for you?
I think with the whole conversation we're having, it is about allowing that flexibility and having that hybrid model going forward. And I don't think we have to choose.
Okay. Where are you on this, Rachel?
I think the thing to do is to have an array of different options. And as long as you're transparent about it and you have things that different people can choose from, I think it doesn't make sense to assume that everyone's the same. And traditionally, the assumption has been everyone's a childless male in their 20s in a lot of workplaces, and those things are just not true. So as an example, we're working with a lot of companies at the moment on covering after school care from 3 to 6 p.m. And we receive more inbound from companies wanting to talk to us about childcare for their employees in the start of January than we had in the whole history of the company combined. And that period of time, just from 3 to 6 p.m., that's only really relevant to parents that have children of the age of school age. And I think it wouldn't be right to say, well, because that need is only felt by some of the employees, we're not going to offer it to anyone at all. I think the answer is rather to say, well, let's get a solution like Koru Kids for that very specific need, and let's think about other people's other completely different specific needs and present an array of different benefits.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. Thank you, Rachel. Well, let's have some quick questions. I can see one here from Lynn Shiu. She's saying, what should businesses do to keep their employees productive while keeping their mental and physical health in check and not overwhelm them too much? So you might choose that team to answer that in a very practical way, but as you wish. Joanna.
I think I think I set, and I've had this feedback from our team before, that I set a good example of achieving mental and physical health while being the founder of the business and running around all over the place. Like, I will sometimes, in the normal days, run to the office, which is about 4 miles, and run home, or just to pack my stuff and go for a run at lunchtime. And that has inspired other employees to sign up for whatever gym or well-being class is of their favor. And since then, we've introduced a stipend for all employees every month that we subsidize their well-being or fitness or boutique, like classes that they want to take. And we.
Interesting. What's the most popular thing they do?
Oh, right now, like more than half the team is on cycle to work scheme, and we all have bikes when we're riding in, so it's carbon neutral.
Very helpful. Interesting. Now, I'm not going to ask you another tricky question. So, Matt, you're getting this one, which is it all right for a founder, a co-founder, to say, look, I am going to choose to work every hour sent to me round the clock, but I don't expect you to do that? Or is that a double standard?
Say that again, Ollie.
So you might say, look, I founded the Happiness Index. I'm going to work around the clock. You'll see me pinging emails non-stop. But don't worry, you don't have to do that. Or is there some sort of hypocrisy there? Saying, well, Matt, you need to model these behaviours, as Joanna's hinting at, if you expect to be a good leader. Or can you say, look, it's one rule for me, one rule for you, because I started the company and I got more invested?
So firstly, it is important to model it. But 2, you don't need to rub people's noses in it. So sometimes I send emails on a Saturday and Sunday, but there's this great little thing in Google that allows you to schedule it to not send it till Monday. So there's lots of technological ways to do it, and lots of entrepreneurs they are built that way, and it's also a mental health issue for them. But you don't need to just push that on everyone else. And one other thing just on this, which is, if you're a founder and you're there and you're like, oh, my people won't work as hard as me, blah, 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 then you need to put your money where your mouth is and make them owners. Because you're an owner of the business, so we made all of our employees owners. Because then you're on more of a level thing. So don't moan about people not following what you're doing if you're not prepared to put your money where your mouth is and make your employees owners.
Very interesting. Now, just briefly, Rachel and Sunny, to get your thoughts on this more broadly. Rachel, you and I probably know a few workaholics. Are they being irresponsible by working every hour of the day, or is that just the way of a founder?
I like how you said they rather than you. I mean, I am a workaholic. I'm one of those people who does work all the time, and I do have 2 young kids. So if I'm not working, I'm with my kids, and there is pretty much nothing else in my life. Even pre-pandemic, there's my family and there's my job. And I have stood up in front of my company and my team several times. I try to emphasize this, and I have said to them exactly what you said before. I do not expect you to do what I do. I don't expect you to reply to my weekend emails. I don't expect you to reply to my messages in the evening. And I just think we all have free choice. That's the way I want to work. This is my passion. I am incredibly passionate about building the world's best childcare service. It's what I want to do with my life. My team are very mission aligned, but they also make different decisions, and that's fine. And as long as we acknowledge it, I think it's not a problem.
Okay, interesting. Now, Sunny, I'm going to switch it up a little bit. Someone's picking up on a point made about generational gaps, and Rachel was speaking to this a little bit. Sunny spoke about generational gaps within an organisation. How should businesses go about this and optimise bringing their workforce presumably alongside? For example, should they have, this sounds quite extreme, an equal number of millennials, baby boomers and Gen Zs in the company, or more of one than the other? And maybe it depends on the company, but there's an interesting thought there.
Yeah, I think the number of people from any generation you have within your team helps build the culture and the way that your business works. Personally, I don't think I would put a mandate on having a set amount of people from each generation, because you may have a certain generation that doesn't have as much interest in your field, or you may be excluding the best candidate for the role because you're trying to fill a specific quota. So I think there are things that you can learn in terms of how to put them in place. And I think Rachel made a great point earlier about actually younger people may want to be in the office more because they want to build their network, they want to learn off colleagues, they may not have the space that somebody who's been working for 30, 40 years may have at home. So there are a number of reasons why you may need to adapt, but I think having that approach where you will provide services or support that a specific generation may need is part and parcel of being a responsible manager.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And Joanna, I don't know if you've got take on that, but clearly there's a lot we can learn from each other.
Yeah, I don't think there's a right answer, but I was reflecting on this question on the way in, and I think I sit at an interesting age in that I'm an older millennial, but having been brought up in investment banking where it's quite an old school, you go through the ranks, you earn your stripes, you go through like your series of promotions, to now running a startup where we are more millennial or Gen Z biased in age, and seeing and working with those people. I think one is nurturing the younger generation, that it's not like you can just have it all because you've showed up and you've got a social media account. It's like you still have to learn, get the experience, get the credibility, and build your career. Whereas I think a lot of these younger folks can tend to assume that they can just have it all and it's right there in front of them.
Okay,
it's like
yeah, no point taken. I've got quite a technical question if it's still here. Here we are. It's more of a sort of IT-based question. Michael Frierso, thank you, Michael, asks, as an IT manager, it's difficult to make sure staff are using the approved tools and platforms. Do you have any advice for IT teams who are struggling to combat shadow IT? So it's sort of, sort of flying under the radar. Of course, Sunny, they need an integrated solution. We all know that. But Matt, speak from the horse's mouth. What have you seen in practice? How do you get people? Sort of using tech in a way that's most productive?
I think this comes back to, again, which is judging people on outcomes, not on their actual what they do in their day-to-day, which is related to all these questions. And actually, I do think companies have to take a bit of a stand back from command and control. And if someone is really embracing a bit of tech and it's helping them do their job, then companies need to be a little bit less, I'm trying to think of what the word is in a professional manner, but overbearing on the employee, because guess what? If there's a bit of tech that can help people, maybe the IT team should be reviewing it.
I'm a bit worried about this, though. Rachel, do you see where I'm coming from? Won't this end up everyone running riot? Do what you like, when you like, where? It's a bit, what is it, Martini, Cinzano? I can't remember the ad. But, this could lead to chaos, couldn't it?
I'm on the extreme end of just let 1,000 flowers bloom on this. My team are always discovering, cool little new tools to do product design better, or alternatives to Zoom that we try out in a meeting and they're terrible, and then we move on and try something else out. We're constantly innovating the software, and the idea of constraining that, it makes me feel slightly sick, honestly. I hate it. But I do understand there are industries where you do need more control. If you're working in a highly regulated industry, if we were a challenger bank or something like that, I think there are unfortunately times when you have to do it. We try to strike the balance by we issue everyone a standard laptop. It's a Mac, and we try to basically lock down a lot of the security stuff. And then on top of that, we encourage people to experiment with all sorts of different types of software. But we do also give them training in data protection training in how to spot dodgy software and also dodgy everything else. I think that's really, really important.
But that's a bit controlling, isn't it, Rachel? What about PC? What's wrong with that? And on your flowers blooming?
Oh yeah, these are all about trade-offs, right? We're running a regulated business, and you just have to unfortunately strike some kind of a balance between innovation and control.
And you're doing it brilliantly. I get that. An organisation might be tuned, a person might be tuned in, thinking, do you know what? For whatever reason, morale has hit a real low in this team. To what extent can you relate to that? And is there a word of advice for someone tuning in? And by the way, that morale could be in their seat as they're watching it, internally as the person watching. Matt, what would you say?
I think I learned something actually last night that was incredibly important, which is we know that the number one thing that makes employees happier is relationships, right? And I learned last night there's a difference between fatigue and depletion. So fatigue is when whatever you have gets better by resting. So if you use your brain or your body or your muscles too much, you rest and it improves fatigue. Depletion can only be recovered by, for example, seeing your friends, being inspired by someone that you've met and having a conversation. So I would encourage everyone to speak to their teams about the difference between depletion and fatigue. Because there's a lot of people at the moment they'll take holiday and they'll come back still tired. And I think Zoom fatigue, unfortunately, is getting all the blame because correlation doesn't mean causation. Yeah. There's lots of other reasons people are not feeling great at the moment. And I'll just start with the fatigue depleted conversation.
Brilliant. I think that is a standout moment for me. I love that. Thank you. Sunny, what have you seen firsthand here?
Oh, I think that point's great. It's really interesting to hear. I think the other point I think you made with your team, you sent them out all cocktail packs. I think sometimes getting on a video call and not talking about work, we miss that a lot. Yeah. And actually asking how are you today, what's new. At Ring Central we've got a whole host of groups where we just jump on and you talk about an interest, or we have a global relay team who go and run a couple of miles each and record it and share it. So
I love these. Hannah's going to want to grill you more about these. I like it. Now forgive me, Rachel, and then Joanna, I'm going to ask you to be super pithy, but particularly on this subject of just really trying to raise that morale. What works?
Well, the constituency I am obsessed with is parents, and having good quality childcare to support them is the thing that I'm seeing make the single biggest difference. So we actually, for our own team, give a 50% subsidy on childcare because we just think it's that important and transformative.
Wow. Yeah, that's very, very powerful. Thank you. And Joanna, how about your experience?
I think what we're evolving out of this is the same approach we have that's unbound by convention, doing things differently, to marketing, to product, to everything. We're doing that with employees. Just last week, the team biked 500 miles for SmartWorks and raised funds for them as well. And that was an organic reason to get together, share our bike rides, and put that on our Instagram and really engage with the audience. But it also shows our people and culture, and we all had fun doing it. And so what's that every month or every few weeks that we can do to really get that energy and get the team going?
Brilliant. And I'm genuinely delighted we get to say we met you in person today, because I know that Dai is absolutely going places. So that's DAI. We can find out more online as well. Of course, Rachel, Koru Kids. That's a double K there, isn't it? Koru.
It is.
Koru Kids. Rachel, Carrel, thank you so much for joining us from Muswell Hill. Very nice to see you. Of course, Sunny from Ring Central. And just on a personal note, thanks so much for your support of this event over the years as well. It's much appreciated and great to see you bringing such humanity to this discussion today. Thank you. And of course, Matt Phelan, until we next voyage again, wherever that might be in the world, from the Happiness Index. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Thank you. Right, now as our panel leave the stage and go and find the wonderful Hannah Previtt, I will say a final thank you to them as they wend their way and tell you just a thing or two about the next keynote and indeed panel. But let me stand up to do that. Stretch my legs. Now, our next keynote is coming up at 2:05, and it is with Simi Swill, who's head of SME banking at something I think of as a challenger bank. That's right, Starling Bank. So Simi will be telling us firsthand about what that has entailed, lessons from the front line, if you like. At 2:05 as well, we've got a breakout, which is Action Coach's very popular author and franchisee. That's James Burke. And he's going to be answering questions, however big or small, about your personal business frustration. So that's the breakout session. You'll go onto the Ring Central platform for that at 2:05. Let me hand over to Hannah Previtt, who's backstage. And I would love to listen into this, as I'm sure you will. Hannah.
Thank you, Ollie, and another fantastic session and lots of food for thought there. So I'm going to be joined by our three panellists that were joining us live here at Elite Business Live. And the first of those is Matthew. If you'd like to come and join me up here.
No.
You can't escape just yet.
No worries.
So what I'm really interested to find out is that, you know, lots of businesses these days really pay lip service to caring about the mental health of their employees.
Yeah.
But how do you really tell the difference between those that actually care and those that are just doing it to attract and retain people?
I think employees and human beings, they're smart, and it's like in any type of relationship, you can sense whether people are being genuine or not. So you'll see it once we come out of lockdown. I think we'll see one of the biggest ever migrations of employees away from companies that have actually just been paying it lip service versus companies that have really looked after you. And anyone who's listening, you know it. If you've been really looked after, you're going to be loyal. If you've been treated rubbish in the last 12 months, you're going to be looking for jobs already.
And what does looking after mean? Particularly, obviously, our audience today is kind of entrepreneurs and business owners. They don't necessarily have the deep pockets of, you know, Google or one of the large corporates or, you know, a big accountancy firm to pay these huge salaries. So how can you attract people in and then get them to stay if you can't pay them the big bucks?
Yeah, so good question. And I blame Google for this question. But it is a good question, which is everything that you need to do to help make employees happier and feel respected is completely free. And I think we get stuck talking about perks, and that's why I blame Google for it, like the Google Office and the slide in the office, all that kind of stuff. If you think about the Maslow hierarchy of needs, the basic things like being able to go to work and feel safe, it doesn't cost anything to do that stuff, and these are the things that make a difference. So we get obsessed with all the perks, but actually it's the normal human stuff that we need to focus on.
Okay, can you give some real kind of tangible examples of that, things that people might be able to set up? So I heard it was Bulb actually who was speaking recently about how they've created kind of men's coffee mornings for men in particular to talk about their mental health and how they're feeling. So are those kind of some of the things that you're seeing in small businesses?
I would say they're useful initiatives that work on a basis per basis company, and whatever people are into, that works. But I genuinely think the most important thing above all of this is your boss, do they care about your career? And do they care about your career outside of this company? Like, for example, if you had an opportunity outside this company and it was better for you, do you think your boss would actually tell you that? And I think that for me, that's what I think is the best thing that you can offer anyone, which is, do you genuinely care about their career?
Yeah, and that's a really interesting question actually, and it's one I might put to a couple of our other speakers about kind of personal development, which can be really hard within a small business because there's not necessarily the obvious kind of roadmap, if you like, through a company that you would have in a large corporate, right? Because there's not that hierarchy. So we've got a couple of questions that have come through for you here. What about the role of technology? I know we touched on it there, but do you think that does it help or hinder human interaction?
I think we talk about the Dunbar number really quickly. So the Dunbar number is around 100 to 120, which is the level at which a human society starts to break down once you get beyond. So when companies get above 120 or so, everyone doesn't know each other's name. So I think companies above 100, we call it emotional intelligence at scale. So some of our clients got 450,000 employees. The CEO wants to be able to flick in and see, how's everyone feeling? If you've got 50 employees, you should be able to do that yourself. So I think it's the scale thing that companies need help with.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what? We're going to have to wrap up there.
No
I can
worries.
speak to you all day, Matthew, but thank you very much for your thoughts and observations this morning. They have been incredibly useful to all of those businesses out there watching. So
thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank
Great
you.
to see humans in real life.
Yes.
Long may it continue.
Thank you.
Okay, if I could now welcome Joanna from Dai. I haven't seen any of your pieces in real life. I look forward to doing so very soon. So can you just tell us about your team that you have at the moment? How many of you are there?
So we are on about 7 people full time, and we've got an extended team of our consultants and agencies that work with us on a daily and weekly basis.
And do you think that's really useful for a business of your size to be able to kind of ramp up and down like that without taking on all the additional costs, etc., of having an increased headcount?
Absolutely. I think especially during the last year, we all wear lots of different hats within the company, but I think that gave us the agility and flexibility to really step in and all hands on deck on something important that we're doing, or really spread our resources and divide and conquer.
And did you hear that last question that Matthew and I ended on there, which I think is a really interesting one? And I actually hosted a people summit for fast growth kind of scale up businesses a couple of years ago, and this was something that came up. So thinking about those development opportunities for your team, because it's a bit of a kind of double-edged sword, isn't it? Because they can wear many hats, learn lots of different skills, but at the same time there isn't always that immediate, obvious route of progression through the company. So how do you deal with that?
I think it's actually an advantage for someone that's a startup, or even down to the size of my company, because it's a land grab of opportunities for development, for showing just how competent you are, just how senior you can get. And when you perform, it's over a year-on-year period, and you see how far that person has come. The promotion opportunities, the responsibilities they get are so much greater, and if and when they ever move on, there's so much more on their CV that they can talk about that they've done as a part of our incredible growth journey.
Mm-hmm. And who was your first hire, if I could ask?
My first hire was our head of customer experience and styling. So that really took on both the digital piece of dealing with customers as well as the in-store piece of dealing with customers. And this person has both experiences, so that's been great. And now she's very people's person and head of our partnerships as well through marketing.
I think that's very telling, actually, that kind of first hire as to what the immediate priorities are for the business, because for others it might be kind of an FD and kind of taking on that expertise. So Thank you very much. That's all we have time for. But
Lovely to see
do
you.
please stick around, and I hope to speak to you again soon.
Great. Thank you
Thank
so
you very
much.
much. Take care, Joanna. And last but not least, and Sonny, I hope you've saved some pearls of wisdom
Hopefully,
for me. I know this is your kind of third time through the mill. So as you were, you could hear there, we were talking about kind of development opportunities.
Yeah.
How do you see, because you're also a manager, aren't you?
Yeah.
So how do you see your role as kind of helping to develop and bring on young talent?
I think for me, part of my sort of approach to management is development and learning is one of the key things of bringing somebody through your business. I don't think we're at a stage anymore where somebody generally is going to be at a business for life. So helping them develop, learn new skills and support them through that journey for me is imperative. So I try and make sure my employees get one-on-one time with me, if they need mentorship with other people in the company, if they're looking at learning different skills, I try and support them in any way I can, whether that's financial of putting budget towards a course, or whether that's introducing them to other people, or widening my network and trying to help them in that way. But I think learning and development for employees is the most important thing a manager should be doing.
Absolutely. And as we were discussing earlier, when you don't necessarily have big budgets to give them more money, if you can offer value in other ways, then that's really important.
Yeah.
So how has your kind of strategy changed? This is a question that's come in for you, when it comes to hiring new talent over the last 12 months, if at all?
I think we've been lucky because Ring Central have the technology themselves. So we've leveraged video technology in our interviews. I think now I'm probably a little bit more cautious and spend a little bit more time on those calls, because you can build a rapport with somebody in person. It's a little bit more difficult to do that on video. So we spend a little bit more time. I also look for the opinions of my colleagues and my team. So that interview process has probably got a little bit wider, and we include a few more people. But I think that helps you get a better picture of the people that you're interviewing and speaking to.
Mm-hmm. And how important is a diversity and inclusion strategy to when you're growing your team? Obviously, Ring Central is a slightly larger business than some of these watching, but do you think it should be absolutely fundamental and core when growing and scaling a business?
Yeah, I think it's the right thing to do, but B, having a diverse workforce and having a culture of inclusivity not only makes your team better, they work better. It's been statistically proven that you perform better as a company, your employees are happier, but you get new ideas. If you're hiring the same sort of people from the same sort of background, you are never going to open your eyes or your minds to new ideas. So I think it should be at the core of hiring policies across all companies.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think so one of the things we're trying to do here is to kind of look forward, right? So we've done a lot of kind of reflecting on the last 12 months,
Yep.
but we want to be looking forward to the great unlocking and all the brilliant things we have to look forward to, both in our personal
Yep.
and our business lives. What are you looking forward to the most for the next kind of 6 to 9 months as we emerge?
I think just meeting people. I think I've really missed meeting my colleagues, meeting my friends and family. It's been tough 12 months for everyone, but for me, that social interaction, I'm counting down the days to June the 21st, where we can all meet up. And even today, coming in and seeing a room full of people, getting dressed in proper clothes for a change, it's all been an experience. So yeah, can't wait to meet people and interact again.
Absolutely. More of this, please.
Yes.
How exciting indeed. Well, thank you very much for sharing those pearls of wisdom.
Thank
It has
you.
been fantastic to meet you.
Cool.
Thank you very much,
Thanks,
Sonny, Dhami.